to kick us off, I've got a question of my own. So when you sent that petition out, Dougie, I shared it on my Facebook page. Now, I've got to be honest, I don't really share a lot of Mormon related stuff on my Facebook, my first personal Facebook. But this is something that I felt really strongly about, and I think it's something that is clearly very, very worthwhile. One of the things that I was asked as a result of that was, why do you care? You don't pay tithing anymore. So why do you care? And I can't remember what I said, but you could probably do a better job of answering that than me. So why should people that don't pay tithing, why should they sign this petition? Why should they care?
Because I think charitable work and the help of others goes beyond Mormonism. We don't have a monopoly on being kind to others and the service of our fellow men. There are lots of people in the world who are completely a-religious, who do good, who feel it is their responsibility to help others who are less fortunate than them. And so with big organizations like the church, pressure on them to do good in the world is going to do more good than we can as individuals. It's just numerically, it's the way it is. You remember that example I gave of giving $1,000? It takes 1,000 people giving $1,000 every single day of their life to make a $365 million donation. The church can do that very, very simply. It's less than 1%. So that's maybe a month or two's interest, if that. You know, they're making millions of dollars a day in interest on that fund. So they can either donate all the interest or they can allow us to do it for them. But either way, getting an organization like that to use its money effectively is going to be far more effective than we as individuals can be. And that's why I think it's of everyone's interest to petition a large organization like this to do good with its money, particularly one whose stated aim and purpose is to look after God's children, is to be charitable. If that is part of a organization's kind of model, or if that's what people are meant to think of an organization, then they should live up to that. And if they don't, we should tell them that we want them to.
Good answer. Thank you, Dougie.
So you must have done a lot of research for all of that. There's a lot of figures and a lot of work gone into it. And sometimes we can be a bit bamboozled by, we can kind of off the cuff say $100 billion or 100 whatever it is $1 billion. And it seems as if it's comprehensible, but it's actually not.
Yeah, no.
What I wanted to know is kind of like a two-parter, really. Since you've done it, and I imagine there was some thought gone into actually making the move to sign a petition or start up a petition. How have you been responded to? Kind of two parts: one by members, and two by leadership, if any.
Okay. By members, it's very interesting because some members say, well, it's not my business what the church does with my tithing money. And some people do have that kind of disconnect with it. They think, well, as long as I'm keeping the commandments, therefore I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing. In reality, I think it is important for us, those of us that do pay tithing, to be responsible with where that goes and to understand exactly what is done with it. So that's some of the reaction I've had from members. Others have said, I won't sign the petition because I like paying tithing. Now, that's fine. And they say, well, I've had personal benefits from it in my life. Again, that's fine. But I'm not suggesting, and this sometimes comes out in people, that I'm suggesting that we stop paying tithing. That's not what I'm suggesting at all. I'm suggesting the church doesn't get our tithing money anymore. Those in need do, because the church has sufficient in the storehouse of the Lord to do what it needs to do. They've proved it to us by their interviews with the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post. They laid out the figures for us. Now, you could argue that some of these figures aren't exact, and that's fair enough. But to put this idea to the church at least shows them that there is a way in which more good could be done in the world. And I think from whatever perspective, that's a good thing. But some members holding on to tithing, and tithing particularly meaning to them that the church gets their money, I think it's almost, I have to be careful how I phrase this, but I think it can almost be an example of in-group behavior. We feel like because we are paying our money to our in-group, therefore we are doing something good. We feel good about ourselves. It's easier for us to sacrifice that amount of money to our in-group, to our church, than it is for us to sacrifice 10% of our income to someone on the other side of the world of whom we have no necessary in-group ties. So this would be a move that would force members to almost be more charitable. It would elevate their charitable nature, I think. In terms of church leadership, and I should say some members have been absolutely fine. They think, yeah, that's a brilliant idea, let's sign it. So there are some members who are behind this. Church leadership haven't said a thing. Not a dicky bird about it, because I don't know why, because they are aware of it. I've been advertising it, publishing it, trying to bring it to people's attention. But yeah, I think the problem with challenging the status quo is that church leaders are part of that status quo, right? They're part of that organization that you're trying to adjust and shift. And so it can seem sometimes, I suppose, to them, maybe a little bit of a personal challenge, even though it affects them not one jot, because they're not paid by the church. So it's not like I'm taking money out of their pockets. They're volunteers just in the same way every other member is, apart from the paid leadership at the top.
So another question. This is a really easy one for you, Dougie. Can you, at the end of this session, would you be able to post a link in the comments
Absolutely.
For the petition?
Yeah.
Sorry, and also a link for some of the quotes you gave. So you gave Joseph F. Smith. You can
Yeah,
some of those links.
I'll link all the sources and everything. That's fine.
Yeah, I think it'd be great if we could get everybody, everybody that's watching this, if they can sign that petition. Yeah, that's going to be.
I mean, how many viewers have we got? I can't see how many people we've got watching at the moment.
I can't, but I'm guessing millions. The reality is that would be the best in terms of charitable works. That's the best thing that you could possibly do. You mentioned a couple of things there to do with malaria. We're talking about things that are preventable. We're talking about thousands of children dying every day from a preventable cause, and we could do something about that. So
we could do something about it.
That'd be great if you can get that link on there, and we can get as many people as possible signing. I think that'd be great.
Because if we look at it in terms of if everyone watching this was to sign it, then we know the church does respond to external pressure. We like to say they don't, but they do. We know that after the Ensign Peak Fund was leaked, the church started ramping up some of its charitable donations. They've just given 20 odd million to UNICEF. They're starting to try and put big kind of numbers out there and trying to make us think that all is well in Zion and that don't worry, we are being charitable. But as I've said, those charitable donations aren't from tithing money. Those charitable donations come from external donations. So members of the church are really, really generous already, because the church has got enough money to do stuff like that without even using the mandatory 10%.
Another question here, Doug, it says, what will happen with the petition once it reaches a certain number of signatures? Who will you send it to? Well,
I have a plan in mind. The good thing about the church being a small place is that if you're in the UK, you tend to be able to be a couple of steps away from an area authority at least. And so the plan is to try and get it up the chain that way. I'll send it to anyone with a church email address that works for the church in some sort of PR or leadership capacity. Just if anyone watching this has a way of me getting this further up the chain into Utah, please let me know, because I'd be happy to send it directly to someone. That is one of the difficulties we face with the church being so big, is that we don't have the same access to the leaders of the church that we used to. Okay. Yeah, that's what I'll do.
Thank you. Okay, another question we've got from Melanie. Oh. Does each country have its own central fund from the church, or is it all held in Salt Lake?
So when I spoke about the humanitarian aid fund that's kind of building here in the UK, the church does have accounts over here, and obviously the Salt Lake will distribute money into those accounts, and those accounts will then be distributed locally. But the difference is some things like ward mission funds are donated directly to the ward itself, and then they kind of just build locally. So the church has a lot of kind of pockets of money, which makes this a very complicated issue to deal with sometimes, because there's just so many avenues of money. But the other thing is, we know that the Ensign Peak isn't the only big fund they've got. a lot of people speculate about existence of others, and then there's, I think, is it 2% of the land in Florida the church owns or something ridiculous like that? It's massive. The church has got a lot of means and resources. So to answer that question, yes, I do think they have kind of funds and accounts in different countries. And the UK ones are some of the ones that we have the ability to look at because of the transparency the church has to have in order to comply with its charitable status.
Yeah, and I think we can assume that what we're seeing in the UK is
happening elsewhere.
Yeah, of course. Okay, thank you. Another question. Why wait to get permission? Why not donate to local communities now?
That is a great question. It's a really good question. And there's nothing to stop you. Go for it now. If you want to rebel and say, I'm not giving the church another pound of my money, they're not getting another penny, I'm just going to take my 10%, I'm going to pay it to local charities, and then I'm going to walk into my Temple Recommend interview with my head held high and say, I am a full tithe payer. And when they say, well, you haven't given us any money, I said, yes, I give it to those who are actually in need. You can have that fight with your bishop if you want. The reason I want to approach the leadership of the church is for two reasons. Because one, if they would say, yes, okay, this is policy now, if they were to change it like they changed the immigration policy, then you get those members who don't want to break the rules, those members who just want to do as they're told, the members that are quite happy to exist within that sort of dynamic where they do exactly as they're told. Those members will then feel like they can do this because they're being told to. So that's point number one. Point number two is by asking the church permission to do it, the church is put in a position, if this gets to them, that they have to say yes or no. Now, a lot of people are under this illusion that the church is very charitable with its money, when in fact they just distribute the donations of their members for the most part. And so if the church is forced to put itself in a position, if they really don't want to do good this much, and they just say no, they don't give a reason why, they just say no, then I think it kind of helps us see the true colours of this sort of idea of money hoarding. People say they're hoarding, but the way to prove it is to ask them to stop and see if they say no, essentially. That's kind of my thinking, and I might be wrong, but that's my reasoning for asking them permission rather than just cracking on and doing it.
Okay, thank you very much.
No worries.
Okay, so you mentioned about not having much pushback from leadership or any real contact. I mean, we're starting to see emails coming out, and on the church's main page, you can see more things there about charitable causes. You know, you never know, like you say. Very often, it's ground roots kind of movements that do affect change. So they might go hand in hand. Obviously, you put some thought into starting the petition in the first place. What are you concerned at all about what this might lead to in terms of your membership, in terms of your standing in the community?
I mean, my standing in the community is all but shot, probably, because people don't like the people that stick their head above the parapet, I don't think. And it was quite interesting that, when I was on that podcast with John Dehlin the other day, he said that he gets attacks from ex-Mormons and active Mormons. He just gets it from all sides. And as a member of the church, I'm almost experiencing that same thing, that, current members don't like me because I'm challenging the status quo, because I'm challenging their worldview, because I'm trying to push for change. Inactive members don't like me because I'm not horrible enough to the church, and I'm not harsh, and I'm not mean and vindictive, and I don't give them it with both barrels, as it were. So there's that very niche group of people that seem to be okay with me. But I mean, I stopped worrying about my social standing a fair while ago. In terms of leader repercussions, I'll continue to engage with the church. I'll continue to try and do my best to remain part of it and to push for change. And that ball is very much in their court. Yeah.
Thank you, Doug. I've got another question here. Sorry, can I just? This is the first time we've done it like this with Laura and myself, both here.
We're both nudging each other.
Yeah, and I thought it was really important that Laura be here with me, because some people thought she was dead because I was just doing it. I was doing all the other ones before, so I just wanted to prove that she was still here.
She's still here.
It just feel quite oppressive the way we kind of taking it in turns and asking. It feels a little bit like an interview. So I hope you're okay with this.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, so I've got another question that we've got here from our Zoom audience, but I don't really understand it. So I'm going to read it to you anyway, and maybe if they could kind of further clarify. So it says, do you know how Counterpart gets their funds? So I don't know what Counterpart is.
I don't know what Counterpart is. I'm assuming it's some sort of charitable organisation.
I'm not sure. It says, do you know how Counterpart gets their funds? They are Mormons that work in poorer countries.
Okay. Is it might be some sort of like Mormon Doctors Without Borders sort of thing. I don't, is the honest answer. But I would encourage anyone, if they're not sure about where an organisation gets its fundings, to look into it. The church is in a position now where it has to be transparent up to a point. They have to put that little disclaimer in their things saying that Latter-day Saint Philanthropies is actually, or Latter-day Saint Charities is the one that did this, right? They will headline it saying the church has done this. Like they did one where they gave a load of food and supplies to Native Americans in a reservation, and it said, the church distributes this, and this. Well, then when you actually look at it, it's federal supplies from a federal movement to provide food, and it's members of the church volunteering their time to distribute that food. So the church has actually had nothing to do with it. It's members of the church taking part in a federal initiative. So it's important to look beyond the headline and look at who is actually, if you look at in the text, who is being credited really for doing what's going on. I would encourage you to do that with, and not just with the church, with any charitable organisation that you are maybe considering giving your money to. Look into them, find out what they do and how they do it.
Thank you. Yeah, certainly I've not heard of that group either. So yeah, it'd be interesting to look at those. Okay, so another question. Do you have bishop storehouses in the UK? So this is somebody that's calling from outside of the UK.
Okay.
They don't in South Africa, but they do in Canada. Why don't poorer countries have that advantage? I know that we certainly used to, didn't we?
We definitely used it. I remember when we had them, and there was a period of time when my own father was unemployed, and we needed to use the bishop storehouse, which is an absolutely fantastic resource. And I loved it because we got cereal with toys in for the first time ever. So that was really, really special memory for me. I don't know whether they still have it now. Dougie, do you know anything about it?
I don't know if they do. I know for the most part that the way the church helps its poorer members is through fast offerings that members in local units give. And then that is held locally as a fund. So depending on the affluency of your ward, depends on how well the ward's able to look after its poorer members. And I think that is a bit of a flawed system. You're right. I wonder whether poorer countries particularly are going to really suffer from that. I don't know much about South Africa, so I'm not really going to comment on that. But I don't know if we have them here still. I would think probably not is my thought. It's not something I've ever heard of. I know the church used to have farms here for a while. They used to have a farming, church-owned farms, but I wonder whether they've sold those off now because land prices in the UK are soaring and they saw a chance to cash in. I don't know. So sorry, I'm not too certain on that one.
No, it's certainly. If anybody that's listening and you have that experience, I know they have. Lindsay's talked often about canning and things like that over there, and I know they've got the setup over in the US a lot more. So if you are able to speak to that and put that in the comments, that'd be great.
I just wonder whether it's about the church having enough members to man an organisation like that. But then equally, I wonder whether some of those people are employed in some of those canning places and things. So it would be an opportunity for the church to create employment in poorer countries. So there we go. If not, we'll start another petition to get them to do it.
Okay, I've got another question here. This one's from Peter Bleakley. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Trouble.
So this is how he's put it. Random thoughts for discussion. Any thoughts about the matter of ethical investing? Why the American stock market in the biggest petroleum and social media and tech operations, including Facebook, which they disparage as a waste of time in talks, couldn't part of a game-changing reconfiguration involve investing in struggling, developing economies and using capitalism to help the poor?
Yeah. Wow, we could spend a while on that. But I would say he's got a very good point that maybe what we need to start doing. I know a recent report came out that I believe it was GameStop, the church, was involved with, because there was that whole debacle around GameStop and stock manipulation and things. So the church, I find that really difficult. That the church is invested in some companies that maybe not too great. I don't know this for sure, but the wives' tale around is that the church started to buy stocks in soft drink companies, and that's why all of a sudden the charge on caffeinated sodas seemed to just disappear overnight. It could be a complete rumor. Someone look into that, let me know. But I think, ethical investing is really important. If the church is going to continue to take our money, our tithing money, and invest it in things, we have an interest and we have a right as almost a stakeholder in that situation to know where our money's going. If they're going to continue to invest it, we should, have a right to know what it's being invested in. Yeah.
Okay, I've got a question for you again.
Sure.
Sorry, this is me using my my host privileges. So I fully believe that all of the people that are in charge of these funds are really nice, Christ-like people that want to be charitable and want to do good. So why do you think there's this insistence on hoarding all of this money, if we're going to use the term hoarding? Where do you think this whole thing has come from?
Well, I think the term hoarding is very appropriate, actually, and I think it can have some negative connotations, but I think it's the most accurate way to describe it, because they're bringing money in and not letting money out. Where it's come from, someone said online to me recently that they wonder whether the church has just found itself in a situation and doesn't really know what to do. Whether they have hired, as the church has done, they have hired some very skilled people, some very skilled investors. People have come from Wall Street to work at the church, and they've done so at a pay cut. The church has spoken about how their investors aren't paid like a fraction of what you could be paid working on Wall Street with massive commissions and such. Those people, because they're members of the church and they feel like it's a good thing to work for the church and to build up the kingdom of God, that's fine. They've come over with their brilliant skills and they've made the church a lot of money. And now they've got all this money and they're like, well, we don't know what to do with it. Because the church was struggling financially at points in its history. It's not always been plain sailing. And so the church has got to a point now where some people say it's the second most affluent religious organization in the world after the Catholic Church, because the Catholic Church has wealth immeasurable. But then it's us on the list. And they just don't know what to do. And that's why I think this position is important, because I'm giving them a suggestion. And they can choose to take it or they can choose to ignore it. But I think it would help us maybe understand what their attitude is to this money. Because other than, I think, a bit of defensiveness saying, well, we haven't broken any IRS laws, because that's what they were initially accused of. Other than some defensiveness around that, they haven't really said what their feelings are towards this money, other than some justifications, which I've proven aren't really great justifications, like it's a rainy day fund, but then they don't use it in a rainy day. Or, it's for charitable works, well, they don't use any of it for charity. So they've given a lot of reasons why they've got it, because I think they're just trying to explain it away. But in reality, I just don't think they know what to do with it.
My favourite one is that we're setting it aside for when Jesus comes again.
And when Jesus comes again, it's going to have no
first
value.
First thing he's going to need is a loan. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such an interesting topic, isn't it? And I think it's important, again, to just stress the fact that this petition is a really positive thing.
Yeah.
I know from my own experience of sharing it that a lot of members kind of come across that and see it as something very negative, and maybe don't realize that a lot of the really positive changes that the church has made recently has been the result of things like this. So
and if anyone has I was going to say, if anyone has any feedback on the wording of this petition that you think would make it more appealing to people and make people understand it better, please send it my way, because I wrote it myself. I'm not precious about it. If we can make it more persuasive to those that may dismiss it otherwise, let's do it. Sorry, carry on. Sorry. Thank
you. Okay, so I have a message here from David Eaton and a question. It says, after the Joseph F. Smith quote, was Joseph F. Smith?
It was, yeah.
Dougie quoted, Joseph goes on to say, quote, that is the true policy, the true purpose of the Lord in the management of the affairs of his church. So the question is, has any other prophet or apostle referred to this or said anything else along the same lines?
I don't know, and I think that's a really good question, because we see a lot of examples of some inconsistencies between what various prophets say, and I think we have to be careful. We have to be careful not to put them on too high a pedestal and to say that they're infallible. And that may have just been Joseph F. Smith's opinion. You could always make that argument that it was just his opinion. He said it at conference, but actually the next prophet said no, because you only have to look to our current prophet in the previous one to say Thomas S. Monson wanted to brand us as Mormons and share it with the world and spent millions of dollars on it. And then the next prophet went, nah. It's a victory for Satan. It's offensive to Christ. Stop using the word Mormon. So it may very well be that was Joseph F. Smith's sort of thing. He wanted the church to be financially independent. And I think that part of it has been carried on by leaders of the church, because that part of it has been enacted up until the point where the church now has $100 billion in a fund. So in that sense, that has been treated as policy by every leader of the church, that the church needs to be financially stable. It's the second bit where, or it's the part where they go, and so therefore we won't have to ask you for anything other than, and I think a really important thing to mention there is that other than which you voluntarily give. At the moment, tithing is part of the temple recommend interview. And I feel like that takes it out of the realms of it being voluntary, because I feel like it comes with some really then harsh penalties if you don't pay your tithing for whatever reason. So I think in that sense, we haven't got to the point, and it hasn't been treated as the true policy of the Lord, where, you know, tithing has become voluntary. It's still very much mandatory. But I can't think of anything off the top of my head that leaders have said about it particularly. I know that there was a general decline in the church talking about its money and producing detailed accounts throughout the 20th century, up until the point now where we have the we have someone say, yeah, the church uses your money well. And that's it. It's all we get at conference is, yeah, we're doing everything we should be, and that's it.
Yeah, it's a bit of a far cry for accountability, isn't it? In terms of the talking around the temple recommend, some people have spoken to that, the idea of having to, in some way, negotiate with themselves, the Lord, bishop, around how they manage to kind of divvy up that tithing so that they are able to feel happy that they're giving a portion of it to genuine charitable causes, but that still be able to answer that temple recommend and have a temple recommend at the end of it. I don't know whether anyone's spoken to you about this or you've got any thoughts on this, but my personal opinion is I meet more people that are happy to have those conversations with their bishops and their stake presidents and voice concerns, I suppose, thoughts of their conscience when it comes to money matters and tithing. And they're getting good feedback. Bishops are starting to not hold them to ransom on that as much.
Right.
I certainly know of a couple of bishops that have said, come to the temple. The Lord wants you at the temple. Doesn't, you know, if you've got an issue with that, it's between you and the Lord. And I just think that's a real positive kind of way forward if more leaders can embrace that thought.
I mean, I know I've heard stories of people being told they need to pay X amount of tithing before they qualify for a recommend, because the bishop knows what they earn and they know what they should have been paying. That's never happened to me, and I feel like it shouldn't ever happen, that we should be able to, it should be between us and the Lord, and we should just be able to say to the bishop, I'm a full tithe payer. And particularly in as you said, in voicing kind of concerns about what our tithing is used for and concerns about money issues and things, we should be able to have that open conversation with them and say, well, I'd love to see the day when people could say, well, I don't pay 10% of my money for whatever reason, but I give 10% of my time. That people can say, I give a tithe of, because we in the temple, we promise to give more than just our money to the church. We give everything that we have and we've been blessed with to the church and to the building up of the kingdom of God. So why can we not give more than just our money? That's when it starts to feel a little bit like it's too much about the money, because actually, realistically, tithes back in the day in the Old Testament used to be given in offerings from flocks and from whatever you had. conveniently, you can tithe the church with some money, but we're at the point now where they don't need that money. So could they just start to say, well, you start to pay a tithe in charitable works that you do, in volunteering, in whatever. We can negotiate what it means to give a tithe.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I think that's a really good point. Really good point.
I just want to read some of the statements that are on the Zoom that have been put forward by people on Zoom. Obviously, those that are watching on Facebook, you can see the comments there. And Doug, if you're okay to go on there afterwards and address any questions that we haven't managed to get to, that'd be fantastic. But yeah, there's a couple of things on Zoom here. So it says, this is from Kathy Hoary. She says, physical storehouses in the UK were closed quite a few years ago. It was then said the bishop's storehouse was the ward members' own stores for a while. Right. It was in a ward where members were asked to provide foodstuffs from a list for a ward family in need. More recently, the Relief Society president had to take the person in need shopping in the local supermarket with a fixed budget and pay for the goods, and can then reclaim from the ward. So, yeah, so that's the situation we're in now. So thank you for clearing that.
That's quite awkward. It's awkward for the Relief Society president or presidency. It's awkward for the person.
Yeah.
And then I've got something else. It says this is from an anonymous attendee, but based on the content, I think it might be Peter Bleakley just trying to get in an extra question through here. It says, surely in light of Doctrine and Covenants 26, that all things should be done by common consent, prayer and faith, that it is entirely legitimate for members to question the stewardship of church leadership.
Absolutely. Hi, Peter. That's absolutely a great point. Yeah.
I've got another question here from Facebook. I think this will probably have to be our last question. This is from Lindsay. She says, I'm curious about Doug's response to Mormons who aren't horrified at the accumulated wealth, but who are proud of it, who see the billions as a manifestation of success and saving.
Yeah. I just say to them, I just ask them what Christ taught about wealth and riches. I ask them, is it true that it is easier for a camel to fit through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter heaven? Is it true that we should render unto Caesar what is Caesar's and unto God what is God's? There are so many teachings about the risks of becoming immeasurably wealthy and it corrupting you. And I think we have to have that discussion with members that we can't be proud of everything the church achieves if some of the things it achieves are at the cost of others. And this has been achieved, you could say, at the cost of the church doing more charitable work. Now, if the church came out and said this was their game plan to become self-sufficient, and they had that $100 billion figure in mind and said, yeah, we're going to aim for that. And then we know that on the returns of the fund, we'll be able to fund the church. And they've already come up with the idea that I've come up with, and they've said, yeah, no, we're going to do that. Then brilliant. That is an achievement because they've set a goal to make themselves self-reliant so that they can free up their members from a financial burden of supporting the church and allow them to live the law of tithing how they want. But I know exactly what she means about those members that say, no, this is brilliant. This is great. Look how great we are with stocks and shares. Look how great we are at doing this. Everything's a success story. But I think that would be to look at it through kind of rose-tinted glasses, to look at it through a lens that I think some of those people that say that aren't ready to address more generally some of the flaws with the church. And until people are ready to have that discussion that they're part of a flawed institution, just as everyone is, then I think there's not much more you can say other than relay some of the teachings of Christ and maybe have them reflect on that.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, I've got one last question.
One last one.
This is another one of mine. I think this is probably the most important one.
Yeah.
So on your petition, do you stipulate whether people are supposed to donate 10% of their gross or their net income to local charities?
Windows of heaven, Dougie, windows of heaven.
Well, I'm not the one that can make that decision. I just stipulate that it is their 10% of tithing, and it's a it's
all
a
about
crazy
whether they
argument.
want gross blessings or net blessings, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Do you want gross blessings or do you want net blessings? That is it. I can't really speak to that. That's a decision people have to make themselves. But as long as they're, my view would be, as long as they're paying what they believe to be a offering given in the spirit of charity and of wanting to help others, then I think the Lord would accept that. The Lord looketh not at the outward appearance, but on the heart. I don't think the Lord looks at whether it's net or gross. I think he looks at the spirit in which you give it, would be my thought.
Amen to that.
There we go.
We haven't got time for any more questions, but I think you've inspired some people. We've got Victoria here, says, can we put pressure on them about climate change? This is an issue linked to many inequalities in the world. They never seem to make any comments about this. And yeah, I mean, obviously your petition is not about climate change, but this is the idea. We come from a group of people that started off with consent and ideas and innovation, and I think we've lost that somewhere along the line.
We absolutely have.
Let's take up that cause.
Yeah, she should absolutely write a petition and make some noise, because the church has got so big now that we risk losing the individual voice of members, and I really hope that doesn't happen, because often our members are able to receive personal revelation and inspiration from the Spirit, so they should be able to share that.
Brilliant, thank you, Dougie.
Not a problem.
Any last words?
Sign the petition. Really, everyone that is comfortable doing so, please do, because the more people that sign it, the more attention the church will pay to it, and the more attention they pay to it, the more they might just consider it to be a good idea.
Yeah,
share.
Thank you. Yeah,
share.
Share the petition. You know, the reality is that if we all do our bit to push that forward, and it's something that the church agreed to, then it would have more impact than any other charitable work. If we, again, if we donated £1,000, everybody watching this donated £1,000 a day for the rest of our lives, it would be tiny in comparison.
Less than 1% of what the church could do in a year under my method. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dougie.
Thank you very much.
You've been fantastic, and we'll get you back again soon to
looking
carry
forward
on
to
this
it.
and many other discussions.